Today's episode of the Apter Chat is brought to you by Blue Chew. Guys, remember the days when you were always ready to go? Now you can increase your performance and get that extra confidence in bed. Listen up. BlueChew.com, that's blue like the color blue. BlueChew.com brings you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know it's the real deal and it's the stuff that works. You can take them anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach. And since they're chewable, they work up to twice as fast as a pill. So you can be ready whenever the opportunity, shall we say, arises. Now, this isn't just for guys with dysfunction. It's for any guy who wants extra function and to enhance their performance in the bedroom. I have a number of friends who have tried Blue Chew, and all they have to say is, wow. And their partner agreed. Blue Chew is prescribed online and shipped straight to your door in a discreet package. So no in-person doctor's visit, no waiting in the pharmacy, and best of all, no more awkwardness. They're made in the USA, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, they're cheaper than a pharmacy. Right now, we've got a special deal for our listeners. Visit BlueChew.com and get your first shipment free when you use the promo code BILL. Just pay $5 shipping and get your first shipment absolutely free. Again, that's BLUE Chew.com. Promo code BILL BILL to try it free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice, and we thank them for sponsoring the Apter Chat. Hello, everybody, and welcome to 2019, and welcome to the Apter Chat, a very special So Says Shernoff version of the Apter Chat. I'm Josh Shernoff, and I am your solo host for today's episode. Now, before you turn it off, Bill is going to be here today. He's calling in, he's on assignment, and he has a great interview to share with us. So he will be calling in a little bit later, and you'll be able to hear Bill from the 1970s because we will have an Apter Chat Classic for you today as well. So it's not just all Josh all the time. It's still nice, even, hey, it's the Apter Chat. It's tough to have the Apter Chat without Apter. So anyway, I tried to get somebody else from his family, but we will settle for a little bit of Bill. Now, we're going to do some fun stuff today, some of the more regular things that we do, like a headlock on headlines. We're going to do that in a second. But we also have a segment, Ask Josh, where some of you Apter Chatters actually asked me questions and you wanted to hear my opinion. So hold on to your seats because I'm relatively opinionated. But before we get going, I do want to formally wish everybody a Happy New Year, Happy 2019. And I think that is as good a time as any to jump into Headlock on Headlines. All right. 2019 did not exactly start off the way we had hoped for us wrestling fans, with the untimely passing of one of the most legendary voices in the history of pro wrestling. I'm talking about Mean Gene Okerlund, who passed away just a couple of days ago. On Twitter, all over social media, just an outpouring of love and respect for Mean Gene. On a personal note, unfortunately, I never had an opportunity to meet or speak with Mean Gene. We actually were scheduled to have him come on to the podcast with some predictions for Survivor Series this past November, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to work his schedule out with our schedule, and we planned to reschedule and do it another time. Unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be. But Bill was a longtime close personal friend of Gene Okerlund, and next week Bill will be back, and I'll be sure to ask him to please share some of his thoughts and memories of one of the greatest, if not the greatest man to ever hold the stick, as they say, to interview wrestlers, Mean Gene Okerlund. Just really, really a shame. And our thoughts go out to his family, his friends, and all of us fans who loved Mean Gene. On a much brighter note, we have AEW. So let's talk a little bit about that. All Elite Wrestling finally making that announcement on New Year's. I guess it's the announcement that there will be an announcement. I have not been this excited about something in wrestling, especially another promotion, since I feel like the last time I was this excited would have to be like when Scott Hall showed up on Nitro. This is really shaping up to be quite the year for wrestling fans. And I think this is such an incredible time to be a wrestling fan because you're getting a choice. And that's something that we really haven't had on a mainstream level in a really long time since WCW folded. For a minute, we had TNA, but not really ever on the same level. And it looks to me like AEW, which is going to take a little getting used to say, but AEW is going to really try and hit this thing as mainstream and as big as they possibly can. And look at everything that the Young Bucks and Cody have been able to do with Hot Topic, their relationship with them. You talk about mainstream, to have their merchandise available in the mall, in a store that people can walk into, not just Pro Wrestling Tees. That's huge. That's amazing. And while we're talking about Pro Wrestling Tees, I just want to say thank you to Pro Wrestling Tees for the new Josh Shernoff page, ProWrestlingTees.com/So Says Shernoff. We have the So Says Shernoff logo tee, but one that I think everybody is going to love, and that is the Sarcasm is My Superpower shirt, available in gold and red and also available in blue. I love that shirt. I will be wearing that shirt a lot, mainly so that people see it and say, hey, where'd you get that? And I go, oh, ProWrestlingTees.com/So Says Shernoff. And people go, what's that? And I go, well, you should really be paying attention. And people go, hey, I don't appreciate your attitude towards me. I was merely just asking about your shirt. And, so back to All Elite Wrestling. So far, we have Cody Rhodes has signed with them. Brandy Rhodes has signed with them. The Young Bucks have signed, and Hangman Adam Page has signed as well. And as I'm recording this, the breaking news is that Britt Baker has signed with All Elite Wrestling as well, which is great because that is now bringing a female wrestler on board other than Brandy Rhodes, because it's not like Brandy could work herself. And then that brings up another question: is Brandy going to work? Is Cody going to work? The Bucks, I feel very confident are going to work. I think all of them will at some point, but from what I understand, they're all executive vice presidents, and Brandy, I believe, is the chief brand officer. So I mean, they're definitely higher up in this company, but I'd suggest that they're probably still going to be in the ring. I mean, you can't just kind of start your own company and then take some of the biggest stars in wrestling and say, we just won't put them on the show. And of course, they announced Double or Nothing is going, which the rumor is that it will be coming to us in the spring, but the rally will be Tuesday, January 8th in Jacksonville, Florida. So this Tuesday, and you'll be able to go to the Elite's, Being the Elite YouTube page, and that's where you're going to be able to watch it streaming live. So I will be watching that, as I'm sure the majority of you listening to this right now will be watching it, if I still have anybody still listening once I announce that Bill wasn't going to be hosting with me today. It will be, by the way, Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Outside the TIAA Bank Field in Parking Lot J, near Gate 1 which is adjacent, as everybody knows, to the TV compound. But I'm excited for this. All the possibilities that come along with something like a new promotion, and they're hitting this thing hard, they're hitting this thing fast, and but not too fast. And that's a great thing too, because they're just taking their time. And I think there has not been since WCW folded, there has not been as much excitement and potential as there is right now. I say that not discounting Ring of Honor, not discounting TNA, now Impact Wrestling, but Ring of Honor started out very small. Always great action, always an enjoyable product, but they started out very small and they kind of built, right? And then you had TNA, which started out with their pay-per-view format, but was kind of like, it almost felt like the outcasts of WCW or the WWF, and it never really in the beginning had this like, oh, we're going to compete. It was more like, okay, we're going to give you an alternative in another place you can see some of these guys working. But there was no social media. None of that stuff existed, so they didn't have that as an option. But at the same time, they all had to grow to become what they were at their peak, or what they, in Ring of Honor's case, I'm not sure that it's even hit its peak. I really don't think it has. I think Ring of Honor is really, for all intents and purposes, just getting started, and it's really exciting. But as far as an American-based company, not since WCW has there been something so big, and I understand some people are going to say, well, hey, before WCW it was the NWA and it was Jim Crockett Promotions, and I understand that. I totally understand that. But I'm talking about Ted Turner buying WCW. That's kind of what I'm talking about, that timetable when you said right off the bat, okay, we've got a major player here. And we haven't had anything like that in a really, really long time. Hey, so can we talk a little bit about, and I'm asking, can we talk? I can talk and nobody's here to stop me. It's so refreshing. I wanted to talk a little bit about Raw and SmackDown and the ratings. Specifically, let's talk about Raw. You can hear in the archives at the apterchat.com, the last couple of weeks, I've been incredibly critical of this new era, this relaunch of WWE Raw's product. Critical in the sense that I think it hasn't been a thing. It hasn't been a relaunch. There's nothing about anything that I've seen is a change to me. I did see some really cool things for me at least. Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins being in the Final Four of the Intercontinental Championship Battle Royal. Why those guys who have a fantastic podcast, the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, if you're a collector or played with figures as a kid, or just a fan of any aspect of history of wrestling, including action figures, it's just a great podcast. I actually was on the road driving to Florida for my sister's wedding, which, by the way, since Bill brought it up last week, the wedding was great. We had an awesome time. My sister, Melissa, and her new husband, Andrew, had a fantastic wedding. Couldn't have hoped for a better outcome, and couldn't ask for a better guy to have marry into our family. Comes from a great family himself, and that's about all I'm going to give you from my personal life, because I don't think any of you really care, but congratulations to them. But while I was driving down to Florida, which is a bit of a drive, I decided to put on the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, and my wife loved it. And she has never owned a single wrestling figure, unless I guess you count that she now owns 50% of like 100,000 of them because she married me. But yeah, she loved the podcast. So I can't speak highly enough about it. Why am I giving them such a plug? Because I really enjoy it. They are definitely not paying for it, but I feel that they've earned it. But my point is that they were in that final four, and that's great to see. I would love to see them put back together as a tag team. They're not really doing much of anything with their individual gimmicks that they had. The Face the Facts thing seems to be done. The Long Island Ice Z type thing seems to, like, some of the catchphrases are still there and whatnot, some of the personality for Zack Ryder, but it's not quite as broskied up as it used to be. So I think you could easily put those guys back together as a great tag team. And give them a new lease on life. I would love to see it. We need a more fleshed out tag team division. And I think that could be something great to see with them. But that was like it. That was really the only change personally that I saw. Everything else was maybe we're moving forward some storylines, but that's not really a change. I also think there's still way too much Baron Corbin. And yes, I know I'm not a fan of Baron Corbin, but neither is anybody else. So I think they're just missing the point. I think they still, the WWE higher up, still look at him and say, oh, he's such a heel because everybody hates him. He's such a great heel. But it's not that. He's not entertaining. When I see him in a match with somebody, it doesn't make me think, oh, he's wrestling Finn Balor. So, oh man, I'm such a Finn Balor fan because I want to see Finn Balor knock out, No, I just don't want to watch the segment. And that to me is not a good heel. That to me is a stale character. So in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I don't see why Baron Corbin can't be repackaged or given something different instead of continuing this same thing. I think that there is enough talent in Baron Corbin, and I know some people can't believe I just said that, but I think that the guy has enough talent that if he was presented with something entertaining, something different, that there is something that can be done with him. I'm not feeling it the way it is. I don't think that there was very much new the past few weeks that really makes me feel that they're changing anything. However, I am excited to give them a shot, one last shot on Monday, because it's the first live Raw of the new year. And, historically, the ratings have kind of gone this way at the end of the year, where they kind of go down for Christmas, down for New Year's, and then they jump back up. With the first live episode, or just in general after the holidays are done. So I don't think we're going to have an all-time low rating this coming Monday, but I think if this coming Monday they don't deliver, and I know they're breaking out the big guns, Brock Lesnar will be there and all, but I don't know. If they don't deliver something, it's one thing to get people to tune in so that the ratings take a little jump and they spike. But if you disappoint everybody the way you did a few weeks ago, WWE, then I think the ratings are going to continue to plummet. And especially with something like AEW coming, there's going to be a true alternative for people. And I hope that the people who do not enjoy the WWE's product, who don't have to cover it on a weekly basis like I do, I hope that they will stop watching if they don't like it and start watching AEW or Ring of Honor or Impact or anything else. Not because I want to see the WWE fail. It couldn't be further from the truth. What I want to see is those people stop watching so the WWE realizes that they have to make a real change, so that they can provide something better, because nothing has the history. Nothing is as big as the WWE, and no matter how big something like an AEW can get, I don't think, we're not talking about the WWF back in the Attitude or pre-Attitude era. We're talking about this global conglomerate that is the WWE, and I don't think it's a matter of them ever going out of business. It's a matter of like, I don't think anything else is ever going to come close to being as large as a wrestling company as the WWE, but that doesn't mean that something can't replace it as the preferred wrestling company, if that makes any sense. So That's my take on headlines here. Oh, one other thing, I do find it interesting. Vince McMahon on SmackDown with AJ Styles. That interests me to see what happens. I was very surprised to see AJ Styles smack Vince McMahon. I want to see how that continues to play out, and I'm hoping that, I'm hoping something is going to come from that. SmackDown has been better than Raw for a long time, but still, it needs some work, and they better figure it out by October, because Fox put a lot of money into this, and I don't think Fox is going to be too happy if the ratings don't improve. But that's it for Headlock on headlines. And at this point, I would like to move into the hashtag Ask Josh. All right, kicking things off here with my favorite guy to spar with on Twitter, Travis Volts, at Nuts and Volts PW. He had a couple of questions here for me. So one kind of follows this AEW format here. He says, so says Shernoff, hashtag Ask Josh. Will Cody Rhodes' legacy end up more about his in-ring career or behind-the-scenes activities? That's a great question, and one that I've wondered myself. In my opinion, I think his legacy is going to be the behind-the-scenes activities. Cody is a great wrestler. He's a great in-ring performer, but I think him as a wrestler, take away everything else he's done, and he would be remembered as a good wrestler, as an entertaining guy, as a fun character. And I don't mean that to minimize his ability in any way, shape, or form, but he would be remembered along with many other wrestlers as guys who were just really good in their time. I think the thing that separates him, that makes him stand apart from other people in the business, is everything else he is doing, is that need that he has to just go out and do what he wants and make a change and make a difference. I think that Cody, success or failure, first of all, I don't think he can fail at All Elite Wrestling. Even if All Elite Wrestling was out of business in a year, in my opinion, that's not a failure, because he's tried something that nobody else has done in a really, really long time. And nobody else in this way has done it, except for, of course, the Bucks with their involvement in the same project. So, yeah, I think that when it's all said and done, I think he's going to have many more years behind the scenes in wrestling than he's going to have in the ring. And I mean, that's just, look at a guy like just off the top of my head, like a Billy Kidman or a Dean Malenko, some of the guys that work backstage in the WWE right now. I don't have the exact math to back it up here, but I would venture to guess the guy like Billy Kidman is at least nearing a tie between his backstage responsibilities in wrestling and the amount of time he spent as an in-ring competitor. So, some of these guys can be in this business for the next 20, 30, 40 years, who knows? So yeah, I think that a guy like Cody is going to be remembered for his behind the scenes activities more so than his in-ring career. However, I do not believe he is finished with creating some memorable in front of the camera and in-ring moments by any means. Another question from Travis, from T Volts, Nuts and Volts, PW. Etso says, Shernoff, do you think wrestling news, storylines, podcasts, and interviews have become better and or more interesting than the actual in-ring matches? Hashtag Ask Josh. What a great, man, you had some good questions, T Volts. Yes, I think if we're talking strictly the WWE, Well, I guess we're not because we're talking podcasts as well. But so let's take it one step at a time. Wrestling news, has it become more interesting than the actual in-ring matches? I don't know that it's become more interesting. I think people, I think it's so different that it's kind of tough for people to, look, with news, you can just kind of scroll down. Hey, what's going on today? I want to know everything. But then you're still going to tune in to kind of see what it's all about. If you hear some breaking news about, Brock Lesnar hasn't signed a contract for after this match, well, now you're really paying attention to the match. You want to see how he's booked. You want to see, is he going to win? What's going to happen here? To try and figure out, are they doing this because he signed or he hasn't signed? So I think they kind of go hand in hand. I think storylines, another thing that kind of goes hand in hand because your in-ring match is supposed to always be the culmination, or at least the point B in a point A to B to C to D. Every point should be a match, should be something in the ring because that's what it's all about. These storylines, everything should be settled in the ring. That's pro wrestling. So I think the storylines, have they become more interesting? No. If you're thinking about the WWE, no, I don't think they have. If you're thinking about something like, off the top of my head, Bully Ray and Flip Gordon, I think the storyline was beautifully executed. I think it lasted, like 8 months? And I think that storyline was maybe more interesting. At the end of the day, you wanted to really see the match. But I think to get to the point, I think was maybe more interesting than the match itself. And that's in no way, shape, or form a knock on the match. It's just, I think the whole journey was more exciting than the destination. And I think that it was made to be that way. It wasn't so much about the match as it was just, getting to that finish and just really enjoying the overall body of work. Podcasts. Yes, I think podcasts have become more interesting, specifically the Apter Chat. No, I think I do think podcasts have become more interesting than the actual in-ring matches in a lot of ways because we as wrestling fans, we thrive on behind the scenes. We thrive on talking about wrestling. It's how I'm able to sit here and have a conversation with myself about wrestling because I'm really passionate about talking about it. So yeah, I think podcasts, I think something like Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. I think shows like that, Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, Talk is Jericho. There are a lot out there. And of course, the Apter Chat. And of course, the monthly So Says Shernoff special that I have a big announcement about a little bit later. I think that these podcasts have kind of allowed fans to continue to love wrestling even when they're not thrilled with some of the storylines they're seeing today. So I think overall the podcasts have allowed, I know a lot of people who don't really watch the current product of WWE, of Ring of Honor, of Impact, of anything, New Japan, they don't watch any of it, but they won't miss a specific podcast. They'll get their news from podcasts. So I think that podcasts, again, more interesting than the actual in-ring matches. Maybe not more interesting, but more, maybe people are more interested in them. I know that's kind of confusing. That doesn't really make any sense what I just said, but I think you get what I'm saying. People are more interested in the podcast than watching the matches. Not that the matches themselves aren't necessarily interesting. And then, interviews, if we're talking about like backstage interviews, things like that, that stuff's always, one of the things that interested me with the question was because when people often talk about how they fast forward Raw, they fast forward SmackDown, because it's a lot of time. Well, let me ask you, ask yourself or send me a message at So Says Shernoff or send us a message at the Apter Chat, and let us know, when you fast forward Raw, do you fast forward the backstage segments? Do you fast forward the in-ring segments, interviews or promos, or do you fast forward the matches? And I think most people are going to say they fast forward the matches, because most of these matches don't matter. You know, you're not fast forwarding a match at WrestleMania, right? You're fast forwarding a random match on Raw that, as of late, we've seen 15 times. So people don't really, at the end of the day, to use that cliche, and I know Bill wasn't here to point out the cliche, so I figured I should do it myself. But at the end of the day, wrestling is supposed to be like a male soap opera. It's supposed to be a story, and I don't think there's anything wrong with some of it being more interesting. It's a lot of wrestling to absorb, and there's only so many ways somebody can do a match before you just say, like, okay, if the stakes aren't there, I'm not sure how much I care to watch this match, no matter how talented the people are who are in it. I also think that the matches could be made a little bit more interesting sometimes, which is really, really tough for these guys to do when they're only given a couple of minutes of TV. So, check out a house show next time. You're going to get to see these guys really work. But yeah, I mean, that's my opinion on that. That was a great question. Let's see. We have another one that came in here and this was like a multifaceted question, from Ignition_Impact at Ignition_Impact. They said, do you think it's possible that the WWE's roster could get too large and hurt the WWE? They already have great underutilized talent on all of their brands, and there's always rumors of them signing more talent. So and then they have, I guess they're continuing. Also coming in April, everyone is expecting call-ups from NXT, but is there anywhere to put them? I see a lot of upset fans in the future that their favorite wrestler is underused or let go altogether. Do you see roster cuts coming in 2019? Do you think WWE's current system is flawed? So that's just about 3 questions there. So I'll break them down. So the first thing, do you think it's possible that WWE's roster could get too large and hurt the WWE? Hurt the WWE? No, I don't think it could hurt them to be too large. I think it could hurt the individual talent. I guess it could water down the product if there's just too many people being thrown at us. But I don't think that it could necessarily hurt the WWE. I do think it could hurt the talent, could hold back talent. I think the only way it could hurt the WWE is if they end up, which kind of brings me to your other question. Do I see roster cuts coming in 2019? If they've got new talent coming up, I could easily see the WWE releasing some of their guys that they haven't been using. And now with something like an AEW or Ring of Honor or an Impact, that's where I think long-term it could hurt the WWE, because they could lose some really talented guys. Let's look at a guy like Tyler Breeze, for instance, okay? That's a guy who I believe, if given the right opportunity, could be an enormous star. I really do think that. So there's an example of, let's say, a guy like Tyler Breeze. They're just like, all right, it's not working. It's not good here. Man, look no further than Cody. Look no further than Drew McIntyre when he was released as a member of 3MB. And he went out onto the indies and he carved a name for himself. And of course, obviously found his way back, and he's possibly the best star, the biggest star they have right now, the best that they have right now, from a character standpoint. But yeah, I think that, that could be a thing. There could be some roster cuts. I wouldn't be surprised if there are roster cuts. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are 205 Live guys, just because they get the least exposure. I could definitely see some roster cuts coming in 2019. but at the same time, that could potentially hurt the WWE. I don't know that it would hurt, because worst case scenario, they go somewhere else and somewhere else becomes real true competition. I think that could be the best thing for the WWE. So, I don't think that it could hurt them. I just think it could hurt the talent, because, there are some guys that are just going to get passed over because WWE is going to say, okay, we've had him here for a while, I haven't really done anything. Ty Dillinger is one that, he is a very talented performer, and I think could really be something. I talked about Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins. I think both those guys are excellent, and I don't think anyone should just because of how they've been booked, there's no reason those guys couldn't be main eventers. And some people are going to go, oh, I don't really see that. Trust me, those guys could be main eventers if they were being booked the right way. I truly, truly believe that. And since today is my show, I can say whatever I want. Let's see. Do you see the roster cuts coming? Yeah, I answered that. Do you think their current system, WWE's current system, is flawed? So I'm going to answer that based on how I'm perceiving your question. Their current system of bringing talent up. No, I don't think it's flawed. I think it's become pretty refined. I think, let me rephrase that. I think their current system of developing talent is not flawed at all. I think what they're doing down in NXT is amazing. I think they're creating some real stars, some great wrestlers. And I think that their presentation in NXT is fantastic. I do think that there are some challenges with transitioning from NXT to the main roster with some of these characters working. There are just some characters that work in smaller settings and some characters that work in larger settings, and some talent that thrives in a smaller setting and some talent where their energy just, floats to the top of the arena. It's flawed. I don't know. I think poor choices have been made. Bobby Roode being one of them. I think that he should have come up as a major heel immediately and been shot to the moon as a heel on WWE programming. So, because I think in NXT, I think he was fantastic. A guy like Drew, I thought for a second that they didn't know what they were doing, and I still stand by the fact that they didn't know what they were doing, and I think they had the circumstance with Roman Reigns that led them to say, okay, you know what? We got to go back to Braun as our big baby face, and let's break this thing up. And I think they've just kind of been finding their way back to Drew, but I didn't really care for how he was being used when he first came up. So, but in NXT, he was fantastic. And now I think he's great. But yeah, that was a great question. And that's where we're going to end it here for Ask Josh, because I think right now, if I'm seeing this message correctly, we've got the one and only Bill Apter, and Bill, I don't know if you can hear me, Bill, but if you can, I'm going to throw to you. Bill Apter is standing by with none other than Robbie E.
So I'm speaking here with Robbie E. Welcome to the Apter Chat.
Hey, I am very happy to be here, Bill. And I'm always excited to talk to you, man. We have good conversations. And you know what? I think some of our best conversations are the ones that aren't on podcasts, because what you told me the other day about when you were at a toilet,
I'm going to tell that.
My old mate.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So I'm going to tell the Apter Chatters this story. I had Robbie E. and I were going back and forth on text as to when we were going to schedule this interview, and for some reason I was just thinking about the days that he worked at Cyberspace Wrestling Federation for Billy Firehawk. Great times, right?
They were good times. Yeah.
Yeah, they really were.
Wow.
And he was working under a different name, and I couldn't remember the name. It was driving me crazy. And of course, it was Robbie Echoes. So I couldn't remember the name, and I was in the giant supermarket in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, and I needed to go to the bathroom.
This
So
is
I
where
went.
it gets weird.
This is true though. So I went and I stood up at the urinal, and my personal piece was put in the position where the water in my body would come out. And as most men know, and women may not know this, there's a rubber thing in the bottom of the urinal. It's usually made by some company. And I looked down as I was peeing, and the name Echoes was there. I said, Robbie Echoes, this is incredible. And I took a picture of it on my cell phone, and I sent that to you. And when this airs, all the Apter chatters will see this, because I'm going to tweet out the picture of it. And I couldn't believe it. If your name was Schwartz at that point, it probably would have said Schwartz. It was just a message from heaven to the bathroom at Giant.
I wonder how many other people in the world have been going number one and saw my old independent wrestling name and thought about me.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I always wondered, and I think Bill Cosby, when he wasn't in trouble, did a routine about why they call it number one and why they call it number two, but I don't remember what that was. But number one on my list here is that something super exciting has happened to you. And tell us about if you smell what the Echoes is cooking.
But yeah, coming up. So it's dropping January 3rd. It's the first episode on NBC.
That's yesterday. That's yesterday.
This is true. Yeah, you know me. I've got twins, so I'm all over the place with my dates and everything. So yesterday was the first episode. Hopefully you didn't miss it, but there's 9 more episodes. It's the Titan Games. It's on NBC every Thursday night, and the host is The Rock. And it's basically like American Gladiators on another level. It's from the makers of American Ninja Warrior, and it is just insane battles where you go against someone in some kind of obstacle. And if you win, you go on higher and higher and higher. And if you get to the highest point, you get to be called a Titan, and you are officially a part of the Rock's team. How cool is that?
Wow, that is very cool. So tell us, first of all, how this happened. How did you get involved in it?
So randomly enough, I got a private Facebook message from the casting of the show reaching out to me asking if I'd be interested, because they saw my videos that I was posting of me doing like workouts with my twin babies where I used them as like dumbbells, and they thought it was funny. They thought I was a fit dad, and it was just a funny story. So they were digging it. So they hit me up, and then it was one phone call, and then I had to fill out some paperwork, and then they were flying me to LA for a final interview, and I nailed it. And it's kind of like the rest is history. It was really out of nowhere. And the crazy thing is, this reality show is one of the most tried out for reality shows in history. Originally, they said over 80,000 people tried to get on it. Now The Rock is saying over 100,000 people tried to get on it.
Wow. Now, was Rock is this The Rock's production company that's doing this show?
Yeah, it's him. So the final 120 of us were there he wasn't there they flew 120 of us there to do this final fitness combine thing and interviews and everything. He wasn't there, but his whole crew was. And then out of that 120, they chose about 60 of us for the final cast. And then, of course, all the filming and everything he was a part of. So it was a cool experience.
Had you met him before, during his wrestling days?
Well, I met him once at the Wax Museum, but it was the wax version of himself. It wasn't really him. And I met him once also at the Route 18 Mall, East Brunswick Mall on Route 18 when I was a kid. He did an autograph signing there probably when I was in middle school, and I went and I saw him from afar. Those are the only two
I was
times.
there. I was there. I remember.
Were you really?
I was there. Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Definitely. So
That's
when you first came face to face with him, since you two are in the same business there, tell me what it was like. What did he say to you?
Well, I dropped names immediately, hoping to connect with him through wrestling. I mean, obviously he's busy. He's busy on set. You know what I'm saying? He's got a million things on his mind. But I mean, he was approachable and everything. But Tommy Dreamer and the Dudleys, like guys that I knew that he knew from his time in WWE that I know also. I kind of said I was friends with, which got us a few laughs, and we were able to talk about wrestling a bit, which was cool. But I mean, he's just so he's got to memorize lines, and he's got so many things on his plate. But I mean, with all that said, he really was, a nice guy that, it was a genuine conversation for a few minutes. But it's not like we exchanged phone numbers or anything.
Now, what type of, no exchange of phone numbers. We'll correct that. I'll call his mother. We'll correct that. That's all. What type of things did you compete in, or are you permitted to talk about that since your episode hasn't aired yet?
I am not.
Okay.
But what I can say is that I didn't embarrass myself, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And that also the obstacles on this show are like no other. Like, I mean, it's American Gladiators, like I said, on another level. The set is unbelievable, and it's a larger than life show when you watch it. Like, it's honestly unbelievable. It's going to be one of the biggest reality shows, I think, of all time, because I think this definitely is only going to be, the beginning. I think they're already in talks to, for next season and everything. And I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's great. Now, when this will air on NBC, and do you know the time frame?
I forget if it's on 8 Eastern or 9 Eastern. But it'll be every Thursday night that it is on for 10 weeks.
And, I wanted to ask you, because you and so many people who are in the wrestling business seem to be striving. I mean, look at what's happened to The Rock, of course, and now John Cena. And people in the wrestling business, the athletes, seem to be striving to reach out to showbiz and other forms of entertainment. Is that your eventual goal too, Rob?
Are you comparing me to The Rock and John Cena? Are you saying that I'm
always,
on their
of
level?
course, I can see you. No, but is that something that you're striving for as well, to get into more different genres of entertainment based upon your wrestling career?
Yeah, I mean, it's 2018 it's 2019 now. It's 2019, so
right.
I mean, whatever I have to do to keep my name relevant, to keep my bills paid, and just to keep being able to travel on the world and have fun when I'm doing. I mean, whatever I got to do, I would love to explore other options. I've done a few of, I don't know what you would call them, lower budget indie films that went straight to Netflix and stuff like that I had some minor scenes in. And, so I've touched on some stuff, and it was fun to do. But yeah, I mean, I would love to do it on a larger level. Maybe this was the beginning. Who knows what will happen from this show?
So where can all these agents and fans and everybody, where can they find you on social media to get in touch with you for some of these jobs, or just to say hello?
Well, I'm at Robert Strauss on Twitter, at Robert Strauss on Instagram. That's kind of like the new thing that I'm going by, the Robert Strauss brand, a new character I've been doing in like House of Hardcore and stuff, where I'm a motivational speaker to move away a little bit from the Robbie E. And then, of course, my podcast drops every Wednesday, Why It Ended. You can get that anywhere. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. And then, of course, I'm somewhere different every weekend, wrestling all over the world.
And of course, if people stop off at giant supermarkets in Pennsylvania, they can. There's actually it's a .com. I'm glad
do you remember, Bill? Do
What?
you remember that you brought Johnny Storm to a Hardway wrestling show in Pennsylvania probably 15 years ago, and I wrestled him there?
I do. Johnny Storm and
Yep.
Jody Fleiss. They were in town together. Yes. Yeah, I definitely remember that.
But that day you were only with Johnny Storm. Jody wasn't there. I don't know why you were only with him.
Now, what made you remember that?
I don't know. I just don't know if I ever told you, because I remember you being with him. You, I guess, drove him to the show or something.
Yeah, he was at my house. We were doing karaoke in my basement. We both we were doing a duet on "I Swear by the Moon and the Stars in the Sky." We both
All for one.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a good song.
No. The version I was doing was John Michael Montgomery. He had it first. John Michael Montgomery had I Swear and I Can Love You Like That before All for One. They were country songs.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
All right. The Robbie E. It was
Right.
great to have you on the Apter Chat, and we'll see you at the matches. And now back to Apter's Alley and the Apter Chat.
All right, great interview with Robbie E. Excited to watch him on the Rock's new show. And Bill, it was wonderful to hear from you. Thanks for sending it back to Apter's Alley. But I'm not in Apter's Alley. I'm in my office. I guess we could call it Shernoff's solarium. I don't know. I have like a window in here. So wherever I am, it's not Apter's Alley. No offense to Apter's Alley. It's a lovely place to be taken. But yeah, that was a great interview with Robbie E. And a horrifying visual that Bill sent me. He sent that text message to me of the urinal cake with Ecos on it. And if you're thinking, man, I wonder what a used urinal cake looks like, it's exactly what you would imagine. Bill Apter, the legendary Bill Apter, urinated on said urinal cake, and then presumably without even a zip up or a hand washing, took a photograph of said urinal cake and sent it to me. And so that was a really tough day for me. And I hope that he does post it online so that all of you Apter Chatters get to experience just a little bit of what it's like to be friends with Bill Apter. No, I love Bill, and I'm looking forward to having Bill back on the show next week to get things kind of back to the way they're supposed to be here at the Apter Chat. One thing that we do here at the Apter Chat is the Apter Classics, and I'm gonna throw you guys back to Bill Apter back in the 70s for the Apter Chat Classic here. He's interviewing none other than Bobby Shane, and we've talked about Bobby Shane on our show before, available in the archives at theafterchat.com. Bobby Shane, perhaps one of the original kings. He lent his crown and robe, I believe, to Jerry Lawler. Bobby Shane tragically passed away in a plane crash, and that was on February 20th, 1975, at the age of 29. And when I did my research, that shocked me. I had always heard of Bobby Shane and seen some things of him, but I just never put into I never understood how young he was. And it really makes you wonder what more contributions he could have given, to pass away in 1975 before wrestling really took off. And it makes you wonder if a guy like Bobby Shane would have had a spot in the 80s in the WWF when the territories started shutting down. Great interview that Bill conducted back in the early 70s, and I'm going to throw it to that right now. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Apter interviewing Bobby Shane on this week's Apter Chat Classics.
Okay, this is Bill Apter. We're in Boston, and we're speaking here with very versatile Bobby Shane. How are you, Bobby?
I don't feel very versatile today. We're just looking through one of your magazines, one of these little paper items you have.
What, there's
put
something bothering
together.
you about it?
No, I was just reading a woman's view of Bobby Shane. A beautiful comet comes streaking across the sky.
Do you feel that describes you aptly enough?
Well, it does a bit. I like some of the photos of myself. It's nice to be in print and have yourself.
Bobby, can I ask you...
It's nice to be a star, but
Are you in love with yourself?
Well, let's say that you like yourself. If you don't like yourself, how can you hope for others to like you?
Well, it seems to come across more that you more than like yourself, you sort of admire yourself.
Well, certainly. Many people admire me. You know, I'm not the one who calls myself the king of wrestling, but who am I to argue with all those thousands or possibly millions of wrestling fans who do call me the king of wrestling?
Does Bobby Shane have many wrestling fans?
Of course. Probably well, to quote your own magazine, probably the greatest wrestler to ever wrestle in the state of Florida, Georgia, Carolinas, Alabama. It's just a pity that there's not two of me where I can go through all the United States and wrestle in each and every arena every night of the week, but there's only one Bobby Shane, so I must be quite choosy and just ration myself out across the country whenever I possibly can.
Okay, now, Bobby, a lot of people have written to us and they've asked questions. You had a very beautiful young lady with you by the name of Miss Sherry, who you fired at one time, hired her again, and now she's not with you again. Are you planning to rehire her, or what happened?
Well, I don't think so. Like, we're just talking about the article that you have in the April issue of Inside Wrestling. Miss Sherry was fired. She was my trusted valet. At one time I hired her. She was just a tall, skinny, red-headed young girl who I met while driving through Canada one day. And her job was taking care of, you know, I wear an awful lot of beautiful jackets and robes and taking care of them and arranging my airline tickets and keeping my home, which I have a 4-bedroom home right off the ocean in Florida, keeping care of that, or apartment, whatever I happen to be at the moment. You know, the typical things that a man expects a woman to do. So after hiring her, and she no longer was just a ordinary girl, she started seeing her picture in magazines, on billboards, on TV. People started noticing her. She was no longer just another skinny girl or another girl with long hair. She was a celebrity. People were giving her gifts, wanting to take her out, buying her things.
From what you made of her, you're talking about?
Of course. No woman makes it on her own. All women are made by a man somewhere in their life. There's not one woman around anywhere who has ever done a thing on her own stature. It was always a man who backed her up, who gave her that little initiative or the push or the backing or the inspiration or whatever she needed. Maybe a kick in the rear end, if that's what it was. But
well, from what you were saying, was there more than just a business relationship between the two of you?
well, not at first, but after a while I started enjoying having someone around who did all of this, and she did a very, very good job. And so I married her out of the kindness and goodness of my heart.
You married Miss Sherry?
Yes. And, you know, it was probably the greatest honor, the biggest thing ever in her life, you know, a big, well, what can I say? I consider myself, and so do many other people who, rightfully I can see why, is the biggest superstar in wrestling today. And Miss Sherry's only drawback was, like I say, she went for the, you know, the women's liberation. This was only after she had clothes, cars, dogs, and money. Then she started getting the big women's liberation, the big holier-than-thou attitude that a woman has every equal rights a man does. Can you imagine that, a woman thinking she has as many rights as a man? And, you know, this type of young generation thing where the woman's lib is happening. But what she failed to remember is that Bobby Shane, to quote your magazine once more, the beautiful comet streaking across the sky of wrestling, was the man, for all you women out there who will listen to this, man, M-A-N, who put her there. It was not her, a woman who put herself there. She was nothing without the king of wrestling. She got to believe, I guess, that she was the queen of wrestling.
What eventually happened?
Well, there's only room at the top for one. And if ever there's no room for Bobby Shane, it will not be filled by a woman by any means. And so I just had to get rid of the, you know, what can I say? Just, like I just had to have her take 3 giant steps backwards out of my life, and she fell right off the comet into the sky, and she's out there floating around the sky somewhere.
Where you left her, in other words, exactly as before she met Bobby Shane?
That's right, because when she found out, and she was left, that women's liberation and young generation, she couldn't eat that, or there was nobody around to take care of that big convertible, or there was nobody around to keep the upkeep on that big summer cottage, or nobody around to get that poodle clipped and fed. I just wonder, Miss Sherry and all those other poor women out there floating in that sky, just realize, where would they be without a man?
All right, now let me ask you this. You put an ad in many newspapers and programs in Florida advertising for someone to take Sherry's place. Are you still looking for someone, or do you want to just keep Bobby Shane in the spotlight?
Well, actually, come to think of it, you probably have one of the biggest syndicated wrestling magazines in the country. Why don't you take that rag of yours? I mean, after all, without my name...
Well, you can't really call that a rag, but we've seen some of your ring attire, you know, which we could also...
No. You know, and I know, you're saying that in jest, that without my name on the cover of your magazine, you probably wouldn't sell any, but there's an awful lot of people, and I know you reach more wrestling fans than anybody else. So I'm not asking you this as a favor. I'm kind of authorizing this as the king of wrestling. Why don't you just take one of those ads I had in some of the Southern wrestling programs and put in your magazine, and any young lady out there, I say young because I got quite a few photos and pictures.
Lonely widows?
Lonely widows with, you know, I mean, I just, let's face it, today, after a woman's 28 or so, she's gone, you know, with this, all the push-button things in the home, they just kind of sit around and they're kind of start protruding in the wrong places. But the thing is, I had so many women write in, and I have some photos. I'll show them to you, but why don't all those girls out there send in a photo that we can use in your magazine, maybe several shots of themselves. We'll pick out a good one to use in your magazine.
You, Bobby Shane, will pick a girl that might be able to become your valet?
Well, of course, they have to come up to a few standards and qualifications.
For example?
Well, I just don't want any skinny-looking girl or anyone without intelligence. I don't want someone that goes around, you know, who would not present the image that I have of...
You're looking for royalty.
Of course. I'm looking for someone who has enough faith in themselves, so to speak, that feel that they could do it. And I just wonder if there's any women. This is kind of like a challenge, an open challenge from Bobby Shane, the King of Wrestling. If there's any women out there to think that they have enough of what it takes to hold down such a position, like I say, I need someone to take care of my clothes, handle my plane reservations, and occasionally, I'm not much for being in my home or apartments, but someone who can cook a bit and maybe type a couple letters while I'm on the road, you know, maybe answer the phone and have enough brains to say hello, and that Mr. Shane is in Philadelphia this evening, or no, Mr. Shane can't make that appointment, or smart enough to call the airlines and say, I need a reservation for Mr. Shane. and myself, whoever it may be, to Chicago on Thursday. So let's just see if any of those girls out there have enough initiative where they can sit down with a little camera and a pencil and piece of paper and write, and let's see what happens.
Okay, fine, Bobby. We want to thank you for joining us. And before we do leave, you've been having a big feud going on with Jack Briscoe for quite a while. What is your opinion of that man?
Well, besides being on an ego trip, I quote your magazine once again. I love quoting your magazine.
We've noticed.
I read every issue, the ones that I'm in. He's on such an ego trip that while on my beautiful Comet the other day, streaking across the sky, I almost ran into him. Now, Mr. Briscoe, I know you'll read any publication with the story on the King of Wrestling, and because actually Jack Briscoe tries to pattern himself after me. And
Jack Briscoe idolizes you?
Oh, certainly he does. And imitation is the greatest form, right? You know what I'm
flattery.
You know what
yes,
isn't
yes.
it true?
And you're trying to say that you are very flattered.
Yes. Most wrestlers become very boisterous and scream and holler, but that's ridiculous, because the thing is, a wrestler should keep his cool and think. To me, that squared circle is like a big chess table, and I do all my moves and save all my yelling for in that squared circle on that chessboard. Now, Mr. Briscoe, it was just 3 weeks ago from today that I beat Jack Briscoe for the Florida State Heavyweight Wrestling title in Tampa, Florida.
Do you still hold the belt?
Well, I'd rather not talk about that at the moment.
Okay, fine.
But how many people can say, I beat Jackie Briscoe? And I knocked him right off his ego trip, and it's going to be a long, long time before he gets back on it. But I know, I have all the confidence in the world in Jackie that his big head will get right back on his trip again. But the King will always be there to knock him right off of it.
Okay, Bill Apter with Bobby Shane at Boston.
All right, another great Apter Chat Classic from Bill Apter's vault with Bobby Shane. That was an entertaining interview, and I would be remiss and held legally responsible if I did not mention that the Apter Chat Classics is brought to you every single week by Smart Hold. That's right. Mac Davis has a company called Smart Hold that I'm going to tell you about in a second. But before I do that, I would like to talk to you a little bit about Mac Davis's upcoming match. Mac is a friend of the show, has done a lot for us, and we want to take this opportunity to talk about his match he's got coming up January 9th, 2019. That's this month. That's this year. Rage in the Cage 3. It's at the Mathis Auditorium in Valdosta, Georgia. If Bill was here, he'd be telling me I'm saying that wrong. But Valdosta, Georgia, bell time 7 p.m. You'd want to check this out. This is a 20-year-long feud. It's a steel cage match. Mac Davis versus Preston Paradise. I am looking forward to getting my hands on a copy of this. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be there live, but if you were in the area, make sure you check it out. And if you are somebody with a company that has to put people on hold, you might want to check out Smart Hold. But what is Smart Hold? Well, Josh, tell us about it. Smart Hold is a message on hold service for only $35 per month. That's right, only $35 per month. Plus, there are no contracts. So let's recap that for a second. Smart Hold message on hold service, only $35 per month with no contracts. If you run a business where you place your callers on hold, one of your most effective and least expensive marketing tools is message on hold from Smart Hold. I don't think a lot of people realize that when you have your caller on hold, you have a captive audience. Replace the radio stations and CD players, which, by the way, is illegal. Or maybe you have some really bad music that came with the phone, or even worse, as we've been talking about, silence. With today's cell phones, placing a caller on hold to silence is deadly. Most callers won't be sure if they're still on hold, if they're still connected, and they'll probably just hang up like you do or I do. I couldn't afford to lose that call in my business, and that's why with Smart Hold, we make your caller's hold time more enjoyable and informative while the caller's hold time feels shorter. It also makes you sound more professional, because with Smart Hold, you get pro voice talent, both male and female, unlimited message changes, professional script writers, broadcast quality audio, fresh background music, music licensing fees, and even a Smart Hold player should you need one at no charge. All for only $35 per month per location served and no contracts. So go to www.smart-hold.com and order today. That's www.smart-hold.com. Be smart, get Smart Hold. All right, well, this has been a great episode for me, and I hope an enjoyable episode for you guys and girls, as Bill would want me to tell you. I have had a long week and weekend, and I apologize for like the 10th episode in a row where my voice is just shot. So hopefully it hasn't been too difficult to listen to. But this has been a lot of fun for me to have an opportunity to just talk to all of you. And a couple of things I want to tell you before we go here. This coming January, this month, I guess, January 24th will be a new episode of So Says Shernoff. Now, the first two are available at the Apter Chat YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Apter Chat. However, this one will not be, because this month's episode and the months to follow will be available on a streaming service that I will not name until the contract is officially signed. The contract is in the hands of both parties, but as I'm recording this, nothing has been signed just yet. So I am excited to let you know next week where you will be able to find So Says Shernoff. It will be a Royal Rumble special. We'll have kind of a headlines this month in wrestling, and then going to my top 5 Royal Rumble moments and memories, and then going to a preview for that Sunday's Royal Rumble. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be funny. It's a satirical type of show in the vein of The Daily Show or Colbert Report or any of the shows like that. So that I am super excited of where it's going to be. Also, don't forget to go to prowrestlingtees.com/so-says-Shernoff and pick up my new merchandise with my Sarcasm is My Superpower t-shirt. So I think people are really going to like that one. But if you're over there just going for my shirt, well, then you're making a huge mistake, because you should be going to theapterchat.com, clicking on merch, and you should be checking out the merchandise that we've got for you over there. We have Respect the Comb Over. Even when he's not here, we still have to respect the comb over, guys. All right? That's a rule. So you can pass that off to all your follically challenged friends or yourself. And of course we have his wrestling fix. I didn't know it was broken. We have the Cal Championship Office Wrestling shirt. And of course the Apter Chat logo tee. You can also click on book and get yourself his wrestling fixed. I didn't know it was broken. Book by Bill Apter. And then of course there's also the Maggie Moo Finds a Friend on there, children's book. But yeah, just check that out. We would love to see some pictures of you guys and girls with some of this merchandise. So keep sending them. We've had some of you send them over. And it's just fun to see everybody enjoying some of the merch, as they say. What else is going on? Oh, right. I will be live on Fight TV. Hey, that's a streaming network. I will be live on Fight TV on January 25th alongside Joe Dombrowski and my good frenemy, Matt Mangle, calling the live action for the Bruiser Brody Cup for Modern Vintage Wrestling. That is going to be a great show. We've got a number of Impact Wrestling stars are going to be there. A number of legends are going to be there. Very much looking forward to that opportunity to call that show live. This will be my first ever live broadcast. And I'm really, really looking forward to that. So I hope everybody will go to Fight TV and we'll order the Bruiser Brody Cup. It's a tournament that's culminating on that night with a number of other matches, but everything is just paying homage to the late Bruiser Brody. And let's see what else. A lot of other really fun stuff happening. Some other projects going on. I know Bill's working on some stuff. I'm working on some stuff, and we're working on some stuff together. So hopefully Bill and I are going to have some really cool things to share with you soon. Maybe some stuff where you'd get to see our faces and not just hear our beautiful voices. So that could happen. Oh, you know what? Last week I said I was going to have an interview with Moose from Impact Wrestling. And I'm not going to because it wasn't really great. It wasn't like it really. So, and it's nothing against Moose, and it's nothing against myself, I guess. It really, like, honestly, we talked about the Homecoming Impact Wrestling pay-per-view. And it was just a very kind of dry interview. We didn't really get an opportunity. It was very short, and we didn't have an opportunity to really dive into anything too much. So I just figured instead of playing an interview where Moose and I basically go back and forth, and it's a lot of, you and Eddie Edwards going to have a match. And he's like, yeah, we're going to fight. And I'm like, yeah, man, you wear some cool clothes. And he's like, yeah, I get dressed. And I'm like, cool, man. Well, you excited for Impact Wrestling Homecoming at the Nashville Fairgrounds? And he's like, yeah. So I decided instead of sharing that interview, I would just plug Impact Wrestling Homecoming, and make sure you check it out. It's going to be a great show, Sunday, January 6th. But yeah, that's it. This has been a lot of fun. I feel like I don't want to end the show because I've been given this opportunity to talk to all of you without being interrupted. And I almost feel like I've squandered it because I haven't really said anything controversial. So yeah, Baron Corbin sucks, and check out So Says Shernoff and continue to check out the Apter Chat. Thank you guys for your support, and you girls. Oh God, I can't believe that he has trained me to say that stuff. But anyway, is wrestling fixed? Yeah, that's not how we're ending the show. This has been the Apter Chat So Says Shernoff special, because that is what Shernoff had to say.